In today's training, I'm going to teach you the strategy that I specifically use to optimize performance for our private clients. So if you're applying the strategies that I talk about on this call, you should already have a baseline understanding of how we do things from a basic level. So you already know the protein first fundamentals, calories and macros. You understand how to count things. You know what protein does. You know what carbs do. Like, you understand the concept of calorie deficit for fat loss, eating less than you burn. We're not going to be going into a lot of that. And if you're on this call, it probably means that you've either followed one of my meal plans or you've at least tracked your intake before using an app like my app or MyFitnessPal, or just keeping mental notes or a log of what you're eating. If you're not on that page, there's a video that I have on YouTube. I'll link it in the description on YouTube, or if you're on the live call, just send me a message privately and I'll give it to you. It breaks down the full nutrition strategy that we use at the basic level. Make sure that you learn, apply, and get that implemented first. Then you can come back and apply this once you've come to a point where you started to see results, maybe plateaued, or you're ready to apply some of these advanced strategies. Now, here's the problem is, even though I have clients who've been with me for months and some even years, the big issue that I face with them is they still think about nutrition backwards. They're focused on weight loss instead of performance optimization. And because they're focused on weight loss, they're measuring success by the scale instead of how they're showing up for their family and how they're performing at work and the things that actually matter to them. Your measurement of success should not be based upon the number on the scale. The scale is just one tool that we can use to measure success and progress. This is not something that we're going to use as a did I win or lose mechanism. Sometimes it's going to go up, sometimes it's going to go down. And to be honest with you, because they have that backwards thinking and they're focused on the wrong things, they catch themselves in a hamster wheel of going back and forth and fighting themselves, which is why that struggle occurs for the long term. How many of you guys have been in a position where you feel like you're fighting off the same 20 pounds back and forth inevitably for years? That's why, because you're focused on the scale. Today, what I'd like you to do is permanently flip that script on the conversation that you're having. We do not diet. Grown men, leaders, masculine dudes who have responsibility over people aren't on a fucking diet. That's gay. Okay, we optimize nutrition for performance. That's what we do. Very simple. And here's basically what happens when you make that shift. The body composition results that you want happen naturally as a byproduct of performing the way that you want. Example, I want to be a power lifter and I want to perform as a power lifter. Therefore, I'm going to eat to optimize my performance for powerlifting, right? Therefore, the byproduct of that is I'm going to look like a power lifter. I want to be optimized for, we'll say, trail running. I need to make sure that I have the fuel that I need for these long treks on the trail. It's no fucking coincidence that guys who optimize their nutrition for running look like runners. You don't see power lifters doing marathons. And it's not a coincidence that guys who compete in the same sports in the Olympics all have the same physique. There's never like that one-off guy who's doing the 50-meter freestyle who looks like a pear, right? They're all long, slender, V-taper, skinny, strong upper body, optimized for performance first, and the physique will follow. So the question that you should be having isn't, what do I need to eat to lose weight, or what diet do I need to follow? Diet is specifically focused on restriction, taking away. You should be asking yourself, what foods do I need to consume so that I can perform my best for the thing that I care about? And now when I measure my progress, I'm not measuring my progress based upon the scale. I'm measuring my progress based upon my performance doing the thing that I'm optimizing for. Tracking? What are my main goals as far as performance is concerned? Well, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do this. Now you can ask your coach, hey, coach, these are my goals. From a performance standpoint, how do we optimize our nutrition to do that? And now he can give you a tangible, practical way of pursuing your nutrition goals that's going to get you the outcome you want. Rather than saying, hey, coach, what do I need to eat to lose weight? Well, eat less, move more. That's literally the recipe. So To kind of get into what we're covering today, I'm going to give you three major things that I do. The first thing is going to be a simplified macro approach that completely eliminates the confusion and focuses on what actually drives results. The second thing I'm going to go over is a strategic nutrient timing that optimizes your energy for work performance. And the third thing that I'm going to go over today is how to measure progress in ways that actually predict long-term success. This is exactly what I do with my long-term clients. My clients, if you talk to them, we don't talk about food. And the reason we don't talk about food is because they eat for performance. They know what to do. And they also know what to do if they decide that they're getting too bulky or their goals change. And so the idea here is we want to simplify this, make it really easy for you so you can make decisions rather than feeling like nutrition is a chore, because that's really what it comes down to for a lot of people is they feel like it's this big problem that they have to unpack, where it's this ever-changing formula that they can never seem to get. You never feel like you can get the nutrition right. It's just always this painful, annoying thing. All right, so to get into the simplified macro management strategy that I use. And what I'll tell you is that most macro advice, especially for just like a guy like you who wants to perform really well, it's completely overcomplicated. Everybody wants to think that the best way to pursue weight loss or progress as far as nutrition is concerned is by doing it the way a bodybuilder would do it. And that's quite frankly a way, but in my opinion, it's not the best way. These guys are to the point where they're like weighing by the gram and obsessing over perfect ratios and following formulas that change every month based upon where they are in their prep. What I'll say is that level of nutrition manipulation is not necessary for the average guy. Research shows that there's really only three variables that are going to drive your results, and everything else is basically just noise. And those three variables are getting enough protein, okay, eating enough fat, specifically for hormone production and performance, and using carbs strategically to fuel your projected activity. That's it. Your protein target should literally just be based on what you're trying to accomplish. The bare minimum intake for you is 0.7 grams per pound of lean body mass. You know that as long as you hit that, your body is going to do its best not to use protein as a source of fuel. If you go below 0.7 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass, you're now putting yourself into a position where you're crashing your metabolism. And the way that works is very simple. If I don't eat that much, then my body ends up starting to use muscle as a source of energy. And when my body starts to use muscle as a source of energy, my muscle mass reduces. When your muscle mass reduces, your metabolism reduces. The biggest thing that influences your metabolism is your muscle. When your metabolism reduces, the total calories that you require reduces. So if you continue to eat the same amount, but your muscle mass is reducing, what's happening? You put yourself into a surplus and you don't even realize you're doing it. The other thing that happens when you don't eat enough protein is your body starts to become insulin resistant. When your body becomes insulin resistant, what it does is it basically stops using the insulin that your pancreas releases to transport nutrients to your muscles and to your brain. And over time, these two things, what occurs is problems with a concept called nutrient partitioning. And nutrient partitioning, in simple terms, is your body's ability to actually use the food that you feed it as energy. And people who have high insulin resistance and they're under eating protein, what occurs is their body, when they consume food, just stores it by default. How many of you guys have seen those computer nerds with the really skinny arms and shoulders and the big beer belly fat gut hanging over? Why does that happen? Well, that comes from a combination of three things. Number one, he's not eating enough protein. Number two, he's not lifting weights. Number three, he's eating processed carbs. That combination basically puts him into a position where it doesn't matter what he eats, it's going to his belly. His metabolism is completely crashed. He's got metabolic dysfunction like a motherfucker. So at a minimum, 0.7 grams per pound of lean body mass. So to make this really simple, because we're all knuckle draggers, let's say as an example, you weigh 100 pounds, but you're 20% body fat. That means you have 80 pounds of lean body mass. 0.7 times 80, what is that? 56 grams. Tracking? So if you're cutting, that's how low you can go. You can go up to 0.8. 0.8 is probably safer. If your goal is to build muscle, you need to go 0.8 to 1. Just go with 1 gram. Makes it easy. Okay. Remember, lean body mass. And then for guys who are really fat or significantly overweight, this is greater than 30% body fat. Just eat 1 gram per pound of whatever your target weight is within a 50-pound tolerance. So if you're 300 pounds and you want to weigh 200, don't go all the way down to 200. Start at 250 and then reduce that intake as you lose weight. Also keep in mind that where you get your protein from also matters. You should be focused on lean meats, fish, eggs, yogurt, dairy, cheese, things like that. Yes, you can get protein from shakes, but it's not the same. Your body's not going to use that fuel as efficiently. Research also shows that distributing your protein over several meals without going over 40 grams per sitting is actually much better for optimizing muscle protein synthesis rather than trying to cram it into 1 or 2 meals. So you guys who are doing like OMAD and intermittent fasting, it's going to be harder for you to make use of the protein if you're doing it in less sittings. More frequently is better. So again, protein is your foundation. This is not negotiable. You always hit your protein, no matter what. Now, there's a lot of old advice that came from like the old propaganda of the food pyramid that basically said that fats were bad for you. Eating low fat actually significantly hurts your performance. Research basically shows that you need 0.3 to 0.5 grams per pound of body weight for optimal hormone production. So if your fat intake drops below 20% of the calories you consume, your testosterone decreases by 10 to 15%, your recovery suffers, your energy crashes, and your performance is going to significantly decline. You need to make sure that you're eating your healthy fats. And so don't worry about the calories because we know that fat is much more calorie dense than the other macros. Remember, we're optimizing performance. And even if you do a very healthy, let's say as an example, 100 grams of fat and 200 grams of protein, that's still only putting you at what? 200 grams of protein times 4 is 800 plus 900 grams from the fats, 1600 calories. But the key principle that I always usually stick with is like get your fats from the whole foods that you eat. Most of the fat that you're going to consume is already included as part of the steaks and the chicken and the cheese and the dairy that you're consuming. If you need to backfill, you can do things like nuts, oil, avocados, whatever. Hitting your fat target should be the last of your concern if you're eating animal protein. Most people go over. All right. Now, the carbs, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. And this is what really separates the guys who get this from those who don't. Carbs are used to project activity. How many guys do I have on this call who wake up in the morning, they go to work, and they're busting their ass all day long? Physically demanding job. Raise your hand. How many of you guys have less demanding jobs that are much more, we'll say, sedentary, to say the least? Who needs more carbs? The guy who's on his feet. So the idea here is 2 to 3 hours in advance of my projected activity is when I add carbs. If I don't have projected activity between now and the next 3 hours and it's time to eat, I don't eat carbs. It's literally that simple. You still want to have carbohydrates in your diet. And this is how we're going to manage our energy throughout the day. So like a phenomenal example is a guy like Dan. He sits at his desk most of the day. He's not really going to struggle with energy until probably around 2 o'clock in the afternoon when his body's natural circadian rhythm starts to shut down and tells him it's time to sleep. This is normal for everybody. If you guys don't know this, going back to like caveman times, humans actually slept twice a day, right? We would sleep at night from like midnight to 4 and then sleep again from about noon to 4. It wasn't until really like the introduction of the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s that we started doing shift work and our day was longer the way it is now. If you go to the Middle East, to countries that are still like third world, you'll see that's how they operate to this day. Like Afghanistan, you're not going to see anybody out at noon. It's way too fucking hot there. That's the way our body works. And so in order for you to break through that, there's a few things that you have to do. Number one is we eat carbs with fiber. So we use that to stabilize our energy level. And number two, it's very important for you guys who sit in desk jobs is at around noon, you need to get your ass up out of your chair and go do a 10-minute walk and get your eyes exposed to natural light. While you're doing that, make sure you're drinking electrolyte-rich water. If you do those three things about 11 or 12 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to blow right through that mid-afternoon crash. It'll bring you right through into dinner. For the guys like Troy who mentioned, hey, like I'm busting my ass all day, you're going to have carbs in your breakfast, and it's going to be probably one of the bigger meals of your day. High protein, probably a good 50 grams of carbs. Then you'll have carbs again for lunch. And then you would put probably something in the late afternoon before you get off, just so you have the energy to go do your workout if you're doing it in the evening. Then for your dinner, no carb, just meat and veggies, basically. You see how the positioning of the nutrients were different depending upon how active the person is. So the big variable for carbs is going to be dictated based upon your lifestyle. So more activity means more carbs. You can also do that for like when you need mental capacity. You've got a big presentation that's coming up this afternoon. About 2 or 3 hours in advance, eat like some high fiber fruit to keep you going for that period of time. If you know that you're the type of person who trains in the evening like me, consume carbs around 4:30 or so. And that should put you right into having that energy for your workout. So skip the unnecessary carbs and save them for when you actually need that energy. Let's say, as an example, you're a sedentary guy, you're like, no carb, no carb, no carb. If you kind of feel yourself slumping during the day at any point, log that period of time and measure it, and then just make sure you add a little bit more carbs to the meal previous to that. If not having carbs in your breakfast puts you in a position where you're tired around 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe have 20, 30 grams with your breakfast and optimize your intake to optimize your performance throughout the day, depending upon what your nutritional requirements are and your activity levels. Now, the types of carbs that you choose matter based upon what you need them for. Research shows that 10 grams of soluble fiber daily reduces blood sugar spikes that you get from carbohydrates by 41% and insulin spikes from those sugars by 32%. So basically what that means is you have more sustained energy and fewer crashes throughout your day. So the idea here to take advantage of that is you want to do high fiber carbs when you need sustained energy for 3 or more hours, thinking like demanding work days, long family activities, and low fiber carbs, simple carbs around times where you're going to basically need that immediate fuel. So examples of like high fiber carbs for sustained energy would be oats, sweet potatoes, quinoa, berries, and low fiber would be like white rice, banana, dates, white potatoes. And those are actually better than drinking something like a Gatorade or something before training. So match the carb type with the activity. So the idea here, and this is what I do with my clients, this is how deep we go, is like, okay, let's think about what our day looks like ahead of time. What are the big physical and mental demands that are going to come up throughout that day? And measure that and understand what that looks like, and then eat your carbs based upon what your projection is. All right, so now that you understand what to eat and why, we're going to talk about like when to eat it for maximum performance. You guys know I have the protein first method, right? You guys remember that. This is not something I just woke up and made up one day. Okay. Research actually shows that eating protein before you eat your carbs during your meal reduces the blood sugar response by up to 73%. That is huge. So if you're having oatmeal for sustained energy, eat Greek yogurt first, eat your eggs first, eat your meat first, then eat the carb. The idea here is we want to use protein to create a buffer for the digestion of the carbohydrates that you consume during that meal. This is exactly why I teach when the protein first method for the beginners is like, when it's time to eat all the protein on your plate first, and then just eat whatever's left on your plate until you're satisfied. This guarantees two things. One, you're going to always make sure that you hit your protein target without overeating on other stuff. And two, it's going to optimize that blood sugar response that we just talked about. So again, the key principle behind all of this is don't eat carbs just because. position those carbs because you need energy for something specific. And if you do it that way, now you're putting yourself into a position where you're optimizing for performance rather than just eating for, I don't even know what else. So real quick, let's talk about post-workout nutrition. For muscle building, muscle protein synthesis is driven by your daily protein intake, not post-workout timing. That 20 to 40 grams of protein you eat at each meal is what's building your muscle. The timing window is much more flexible, like I said earlier. But this is important for the specific purpose of glycogen replenishment. Glycogen being the source of energy that's used from your muscles when you lift weights. You want to make sure that you're eating foods that have a high glycemic index, okay? Simple carbs. And the reason for that is because those high glycemic types of foods are going to make it so that you recover much faster. So if you're planning on hitting the gym within 24 hours of the time that you just did, if you eat carbs that have a high glycemic index with protein right after you train, it's going to refill your muscles a lot faster. So that anabolic window, that the bro science was kind of right, but for the wrong reasons. Having simple carbs after you train just enhances your performance because it gives your body the ability to more quickly refill your muscles with the nutrients that it needs. But if you're not training every day with high intensity, it's not really that huge of a deal. Your body's just going to fill those gaps anyway. This is for the guys who are like, just keep in mind for like the average guy, total daily intake is always going to trump that perfect timing. Don't stress about rushing to eat. Don't do anything weird. Like Ronnie Coleman's not going to jump out of a fucking, hey, like the Terry Tate office linebacker or anything crazy, right? Just get your daily protein intake. Last thing I wanted to talk about for tonight is let's talk about how to measure progress. We talked about all the ways not to measure progress, which was the scale. The big mental shift that I want you guys to have is I want you to have performance-based goals rather than physique-based goals. Like losing 20 pounds is a shitty goal. Achieving a certain body fat percentage for most people, not really that great of a goal. Think about the performance-based. I want to be able to run a mile within this amount of time while also being able to squat, bench, and deadlift over 1,000 pounds. Fucking solid goal. Now let's say for the example I just gave you, somebody who can run a 6-minute mile plus squat, bench, and deadlift 1,000 pounds. What does that guy look like? Is he a dude that's asking himself what he needs to do to lose 20 pounds? Oh, if you set the performance-based goals, the physique will come afterwards. If your goal is you want to be able to bench 500 pounds, well, I guarantee you by the time you get to benching 500 pounds, you're going to look like a guy who can bench 500 fucking pounds. That's the point here. So the idea here is most guys are obsessing over the scale while ignoring all the metrics that actually predict their long-term success with health and fitness. And research that I found actually shows that lifestyle scores predict long-term success better than scale weight. Peak exercise capacity predicts mortality risk better than BMI. I'm going to say that again. Peak exercise capacity predicts mortality risk better than BMI, even in obese individuals. I remember when I was in the Army, man, at Fort Hood, I had this guy, his name was Specialist Cottrell. And this dude could run a 6-minute mile. And he was like 280 pounds. He was this big honking fat guy. And the first sergeant didn't give him shit about his weight because in the Army, they're all about height and weight. And I guarantee he wasn't passing tape. There's no way. He was still getting promoted within the unit because he could pass his PT test. Not only was he passing it, he was maxing it. Like, how are you going to knock a guy who is maxing all the physical requirements of being in the military, but then try to punish him because he's a big boy? James, I know for a fact, had that same problem when he was active duty, was height, weight requirements. Even I had problems with height and weight requirements. And I didn't even get jacked and juicy until after I got out. They're very stringent, and they're an old BMI-based measurement. They're not indicative of actual health or performance in any way. In fact, the Marine Corps height and weight requirements are even worse than the Army's. So over 90% of people who score high on comprehensive lifestyle assessments maintain their results for the long term. That's an incredible fucking statistic. What percent of people who start diets fail within the first 2 years? 90. Wild. That's wild. The reason why you're doing it has a much greater impact on your ability to stick with it than you think it does. which is exactly why here we optimize for performance. Performance metrics matter way more than weight metrics. So here's what you can track. Can you maintain stable energy levels for greater than 6 hours during those high demand work days without crashing or using excessive stimulants like caffeine or energy drinks? That's a fucking win. Are you making progressive strength gains in the gym? Can you handle high stress work periods without completely falling apart mentally? Do you have the energy for your family after a work day? Do you have the ability to stay present with your wife and your children after working an 8 or 10-hour day? That's a fucking performance metric that we care about, right? That's why you started doing this. How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Do you have an abundance of energy where you're ready to get after it and take care of business? Or are you dragging your ass looking for the next hit of caffeine that's going to make it through the next couple hours? These are the metrics that you should be measuring. These are the metrics that are going to tell you if your nutrition optimization is working. And they're going to predict whether you're going to maintain your results for the long term. So a great way to start this, if you guys haven't done this before, rate your morning energy on a scale of 1 to 10. When you wake up in the morning, you're ready to start your day, write that down. Hey, what is my energy today? Track that for a month. And if you're consistently hitting a 7 or above, it probably means that your nutrition and your recovery are where they need to be. Monitor your training performance. Are you getting stronger? Are you tracking your lifts? Are you measuring those things? How are you recovering between sessions? These are the metrics that are going to indicate your fueling strategy is supporting your goals in terms of nutrient timing. The other thing too that you want to pay attention to is when you're with your family, what is your cognitive capacity to show up for them the way that they need you? When your kids want to play, when your wife wants your attention and time, are you checked out mentally thinking about other things like work or stress or other stuff? Or are you actually able to stay present? That's going to be a huge indicator of how you're managing your stress, which is also a huge impact on your health and your well-being. Remember, high cortisol is going to have a huge impact on a lot of things that are happening with your body, including your sleep, your testosterone, your recovery, the list goes on, okay? And the other thing too is don't ignore your body composition, but you should measure it intelligently. The best way to see if you're making progress is by measuring your waist. Easiest, most simple way of doing it. How do your clothes fit? Use that instead of like weight fluctuations. Obviously, you can use photos to show what the scale is missing. You can do like DEXA scans and things like that. Just keep in mind if you do like the impedance style trackers, like what are the scanners that they have at like the nutrition shops and stuff, those things aren't going to account for hydration, okay? So typically when you're doing any type of like impedance measurements on scales, you want to do it at the same time during the day. The way that those impedance measurement tools work is you hold your hands and you stand on these diodes on your feet. And what it's doing is it's sending electrical pulses through your body and then measuring the amount of time that it takes from those pulses to go from one of those contact points to the next. And then based upon the amount of time that it took to travel, it's going to calculate what your body composition is, because certain types of tissue have different resistances for that electric current. Now, I don't know exactly what the math is, but what I could tell you is that because of that, the level of hydration that you have is going to have a huge impact on that resistance profile and how it measures, which can make those tools sometimes inaccurate, okay? So it's always important to make sure you use the same one at the same time if you're using those tools, otherwise it could be inaccurate. All right, so here's what you're going to do. First, implement the simplified macro framework that I gave you if you're not already following it or on a meal plan. Meal plan is always going to be better, especially if it comes from a coach, because all of these things are already considered. Coach James, everything that I went over, he's doing behind the scenes before you guys even fucking ask. It's already done for you, right? Most of the time. And if it's not, during your check-ins on your weekly coaching calls with if you're a one-on-one client, you address those energy problems and he's going to help to move and optimize your nutrients to accommodate those shifts. This is something that he's going to guide you through. Second, apply that strategic timing. Eat protein before your carbs and time your carbs around those demanding periods during the day. And third, start tracking your performance metrics instead of just your scale weight. How's your energy? How's your strength? How's your recovery? How's your stress? Your sleep quality? All the things that we discussed earlier. Remember, the core principle that I wanted to talk about tonight to really hammer home with you guys is we optimize nutrition for performance, not weight loss. This is so important. When you fuel your body to handle work demands, crush your fucking training, and lead your family, the body composition improvements will follow 100% of the time. The idea behind the approach that I've created here and what I'm implementing for you guys is it's designed to be adaptable to your lifestyle and give you the tools that you need so that you're not reliant upon a diet plan to stay healthy. If you apply the concepts that I taught you on this call today, you will never struggle with weight. You will always feel your best, and you will always have the tools and knowledge that you need to optimize. The only thing that I'm going to add that I didn't touch on is if your goal is building a lot of muscle and getting strong, you're going to need a lot more carbs than you think you do. And that's one thing I didn't touch on. I would say for a lot of guys, you can go as high as 2 or even 3 carbs per pound of body weight. So if you're 200 pounds, you're looking at 400 or 500 grams of carbs. Ask James, right? That guy does a bulk, and he's got people in Africa asking where their food is. He's like, can I have some, please? So just keep that in mind. That's one thing I didn't want to touch on. And again, the goal here isn't perfection. The goal with this program and the coaching for you guys is always just a systematic improvement in how you show up for the most important areas in your life. And that's really what I want you to focus on. Nutrition is just one of the tools that we have to work on to get you to that point where you want to be. And just remember why you're doing it, man. Your family, they deserve that best example from you. And if you can learn these skills and apply them and be really good at it, it's going to put you into a place where you can teach those skills to your children so they're not paying an asshole like me with a nose ring on the internet to do it for you. So just keep that in mind. The overarching concept that I'm going to teach you guys next week is going to be about the importance of micronutrients and how they affect your body, and understanding that micros are about how you perform and macros are about how you look. Kind of an easy way of thinking about it. So you can look forward to that detailed supplementation, we'll say micronutrient course next week.